Yes, very much so.
Jai Shriman Narayana, here we are,
Jai
it's
Shriman Narayana.
recording.
My obeisances to you, Mataji.
Jai. Namaste. So, right, so today we can discuss about a particular aspect of Vedic knowledge that
Yes.
is quite fascinating for many people. Now, in the last 50, 70 years, there has been a growing interest in the global culture about the aliens, the
Yes, Mataji. Yes,
extraterrestrials, the UFOs.
Yes, Mataji. And if I could just present
Please.
my kind of so obviously, I am someone who's always had a fascination with the UFO phenomena. And in particular, Mataji, I'm also, a self-styled conspiracy theorist. So
Okay.
I'm conscious that there's been an evolution in the UFO phenomena
Yeah.
over the last, 70 years. It
Yeah.
started off with flying saucers from outer space. And then we've gradually seen this shift in the culture where the concept of alien abductions came in, and
Yeah.
we then moved to black triangles with all these sorts of emphasis on that. And then we've also seen this very growing interest in the viewpoint that these might not be extraterrestrial craft after all. They might be beings from either the hollow earth or, dare I say, interdimensional
Yeah.
beings. And some of them may not be nice and some of them may be nice. And obviously I'm standing there, or I'm sitting there listening to this and sort of looking at how this is evolving over time, and I'm wondering what to make of it from a Vedic perspective. And I'm conscious that this has been an area of interest for yourself and you've written a book on it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this very, very interesting phenomena, if you would.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Thanks. Yeah, I got the what to say, inspiration, we can say, for this book, These Gods or Aliens, that I was mentioning earlier, because there is one Italian scholar that is, you probably heard about him. His name is Mauro Biglino.
Yes, I've heard of him. He
Yeah,
translated
so
some
he
work as well,
was,
didn't he, Matt?
exactly, he was a translator for the Vatican Publishing Department. And then after studying more about the Bible, the linguistic aspects of Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic and all these ancient languages, he became a rebel, a dissenter, and he started with the book saying that the Bible does not speak about God. So his idea in his presentation, by mentioning the original terms, explaining the original terms of the Jewish Bible, is showing that this entity that is described as God in the Bible is not does not correspond to the characteristics and qualities that we usually attribute to God. But he goes one step further, and he says that this guy from the Bible is an extraterrestrial entity that is has he came with he travels in spaceships, like that. Biglino has done some good work, but one thing that actually annoyed me is that together with his friend Enrico Baccarini, he promoted the idea that they presented this idea, the fall of the gods of India. Means the gods of India were just extraterrestrial beings, like space people from other planets, and they were fighting among themselves to get to see who could get the control and exploitation over human beings, over humanity, mankind. And they went pretty far into the speculation, because they at some point Baccarini had a contact in India named Kavya Badadi, South India, and she represents a certain trend in Indian Hindu nationalism that is trying to support the idea of the ancient science and ancient Hindu science, but in a very pathetic manner. Like I wrote to her saying, why you think that Baccarini is doing the right thing, saying that the stories of the Puranas and the Itihasas are just battles among gods. Gods were fighting each other. And she said, yes, Rama and Ravana are both gods.
Right.
And they were fighting in spaceships. And I said, okay, I got the point. So I decided to write this book and to present the sufficient information to clarify many misconceptions that people have. Also, I don't know if you have heard about this guy Praveen Mohan.
Yeah, Praveen Mohan is a famous YouTuber.
Yeah, he's a famous YouTuber.
Yeah,
and he's another. No, and that is interesting, but he's also a victim of this alien UFO paradigm.
The challenge, Mataji. The challenge here, Mataji, is that when I first saw Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, I thought, even then I thought this is comedy gold here, because the idea that somehow these ancient monuments all over the world were constructed with the help of ancient aliens.
Directly by ancient aliens.
It seemed to me there was an agenda at play here, which was maybe even to throw people off the scent that the Vedic culture, there were ancient civilizations in antiquity, and that time is indeed cyclical rather than the linear Abrahamic.
In fact, I find this presentation quite offensive, because human beings have a much bigger potential. Why, if we see something that we consider extraordinary today, we have to conclude it had to be done by aliens. Human beings.
Yes, well, no. What that does, Mataji, that distracts people from their true origins, because Abrahamism would tell you that progress is linear and everything started from a certain time point, and your ancestors were backward savages that lived in caves, whereas the world now is more developed. Whereas if you understood that actually there's stuff in the past that would blow your mind, it would instantly dismantle Abrahamism overnight, wouldn't it? Basically, Mataji.
In fact, all the ancient cultures agreed on the idea that the what the evolution of time, the development, the progress of time is not a progress, is a degradation. All the ancient cultures speak of a golden age.
Yes, yes, absolutely, Mataji. And to
And
be
then
honest,
gradually, the perfect, the best period of mankind became gradually, degraded. So today we are in a very dangerous and degraded society and culture.
and to be honest, Mataji, that's gained a little bit of resurgence even in Europe recently with the so-called traditionalists like Ivola, who sort of restored that thinking to some extent, wrongly in some extent, but did managed to at least inculcate that thinking to a significant level. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in my book, I examine the whole scenario as much as possible. So we are going to go quickly through the table of contents.
Yes.
So we start with the chapter after the introduction, the chapter history of fiction, with which I think that already suggests the direction of the discussion, because history is actually what is past for historical facts. They're not all historical facts, they're mostly theories. So, an interpretation, various interpretations of some evidence, but it has been the idea that history is an absolute science has been has become very controversial even at the highest official academic level. Then we have a chapter about religion and mythology, which is important to understand the idea of gods or aliens. Then we talk about Satanism and occultism that started in the middle 1800s and was very influential for the development of the alien gods concept. Then the perspective on Hinduism and the perspective of Hinduism from the point of view of Hinduism and Vedic knowledge. Then we have Dasyus and Daityas in Rig Veda, God in Hinduism and individual devas, and non-divine superhuman beings, such as Daityas, Danavas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, and company. Then there is a theory that I present in my book, connecting the Yakshas with the Khazars and the Khazaris and the Ashkenazi, which was particularly shocking because, in fact, it can explain
very interesting, Mataji, because that has ramifications for world events maybe today.
Yeah, exactly, still today. Then we go and see what are the actual roots of the Abrahamic perspective in the revolution of Zarathustra, which also has ramifications in the development of Abrahamic ideologies and in the present situation today. Then some part, I was explaining a bit about Gnosticism, which has become quite popular in these last few years. And then
I think Mataji, that's interesting you mentioned that, because a lot of the so-called conspiracy world starts to question the role of the creator, quote unquote,
Yeah,
and thinks, actually, is that the demiurge?
yeah,
Is that something? Is God? Is Yahweh really
yeah, yeah.
who is
Because
Yahweh? It
in
ties in with
fact,
that.
that's nothing new. The idea that Yahweh is a bad guy in the Bible is not a good God; is a bad one. That's a very ancient position that was presented by the Gnostic Jews, even before Christianity. So then we have religion and science fiction, and then we start with the movement of the science fiction and UFOs of the last 50 to 70 years, which started actually the scientific research, the historical scientific research, started with Zecharia Sitchin, whose purpose was to prove that the Bible was right. The Bible is an historical book. And we go to Sitchin and the Anunnaki, the different perspectives, and ufology, the cultural trend, aliens, and then we get aliens and technology in ancient cultures. Technology in Vedic India, weapons in Vedic India, Vimanas, the Vaimanika Shastra, and the conclusions. So, it is interesting to note that my books usually are more informative than philosophical. Means I like to give verifiable information, so that I'm not giving my opinions, my revelations. I'm just giving
Okay.
references.
Well, I think, Mataji, it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that, because how do you separate UFOs from philosophy? Because we're seeing something with our eyes, but it reflects in many respects. How do you tease philosophy out from? Because isn't it all interconnected anyway? That's my first point. But more importantly, Mataji,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a very simple, not a simple question, but a question. Was that the average person sees these things flying about in our skies? They hear of reports like Rendlesham Forest, and they hear of other reports. The Kenneth Arnold thing, and all these lights in the sky. What are we seeing, Mataji, when we think of these lights in the sky? What are we actually seeing?
Okay,
There's been a
these
lot of
are
talk
two
about that.
very, very big questions. Let's start with one and remember the second that you asked me again. Now, let's start one by one. What is the connection between the issue of aliens? How can we see the so-called aliens as connected to the study of philosophy? Now, here again, we have a major point, a major factor that is complicating and misleading people. Now, the history of academic development, which started in the Middle Ages with the church, the Christian church, to enforce the Christian doctrine. So the Christian universities were created in order to train the priests who should fight and contradict any other ideology. Then what happened when the Christian church started to lose power? The academic field was taken up by the scientists. with the Enlightenment period in the 1700s, and then with the Industrial Revolution, the age, the scientific age, technological age. And along this journey, there has been a very big separation, dichotomy, a split, a schism between science and religion. So religion was basically whatever the church was saying, and science was basically, no, we want, want to observe the facts and reality in experiments, and we are empirical philosophers. So philosophy was removed from spirituality, just like science was removed from spirituality and religion. Now, the study of philosophy became a kind of compromise between the dogmatic position of the Christian Church and the rebellious attitude of free thinkers. So if you go to any university of the modern type, Western type, we can say Western, but it's it's a difficult definition. You'll find, if you go and study philosophy, you come out from this university study believing that truth does not exist. So it's not really philosophy, it's not love for knowledge, because knowledge is not the actual object of the research. What they are teaching, what they're studying in the present academic system is the history of human thoughts. So they present a series of philosophers, and they present each particularly school of philosophy as separate and in competition with the other schools. And from this point, from this perspective, the conclusion is that all the opinions are equally good, so no opinion is good. So either you believe the dogma of the church and there is no philosophy there, it's just a dogma. You just follow the school of thought. You choose either the Christian, the Catholic, or the Protestant, or, whatever, or you choose, Kant, or Schopenhauer, or, any, Marx, or other schools.
Or Nietzsche is very popular nowadays amongst alternatives.
Nietzsche, of course, exactly. So basically, it was the same idea of being faithful to a school, to a doctrine that is different and separated and in competition with other doctrines, which was the original idea of Christianity, the Christian university. It was, Christian universities were teaching the Christian doctrine as the Christian school of thought. But that was not based on thought, it was based on dogma. So they also, when they started to be a little more secular, they took the same mechanics, the same dynamics. So I say, okay, what Nietzsche is saying, for example, is this. So either you accept it or not. You are a follower of Nietzsche. You're not a follower of knowledge. Because this is what Nietzsche said, either you like it or not, you can choose to follow it or choose some other school and follow that school. And in this same logic, this same mentality, they also applied to what they, colonial Indology described as the Hindu schools of philosophy, such as the Dvaita, Advaita, Dvaita, Dvaita, and this and that. So they chose, okay, either you are following Adi Shankar, or you are following Ramanuja or Madhva, or this or that, which is the same wrong mentality that is coming from the Abrahamic university academic system.
And it's funny you should say that, because a lot of Hindus are very all or nothing. They will say, I follow Adi Shankara, I'm an Advaitin, or I'm I'm not an Advaitin. It's either or. Because I follow Ramanuja, I reject Adi Shankara, and vice versa.
Exactly. But this became popular, this way of thinking became popular, for example, after Madhva, who has become, very, considered in the Western academic system, because he is very intolerant towards all the other teachers.
So, Mataji, I mean, that's an interesting point of view, and I think what you've outlined here is that, and when the point you made regarding how science has been balkanized, science and so-called religion or spirituality has been separated, and philosophy's undergone a similar separation, which is publicized less than everyone thinks. Science, everyone's used to the science and religion divide, but what I think perhaps isn't publicized enough is the divide between science and philosophy. Between philosophy and religion. So that then brings us nicely to this point where, when I look at the sky and I see a black triangle, or when I read about a report regarding flying saucers,
the tendency is to identify with a particular ideological party.
But Mataji, it goes deeper than that, because you immediately take out the spiritual aspect of what you're seeing. You immediately take out the consciousness aspect, because you've been primed to do that, and you simply see a metallic flying machine that you think has come from somewhere else.
As you were mentioning earlier in the beginning, this is changing thanks to the subatomic physics, because the mechanical mentality of technology is gradually being superseded by more subtle, more advanced visions of science, such as the quantum theory, even beyond the relativity. Unfortunately, especially many of the Indian ufologists that are talking about aliens and everything, like our, nice guy Praveen Mohan, they're still thinking in mechanistic terms of technology. So they have to say, oh yes, it was a nuclear bomb, nuclear missile. Brahmastra was a nuclear missile.
I've heard of that a lot. So,
and Praveen, one of these video Praveen Mohan that annoyed me particularly, he was saying that Shiva was an alien who came to Earth on a spaceship. And the other one, the Amit Tripathi, he wrote a trilogy by postulating that Shiva was an ordinary human being that did big things, so he was considered a god.
So, Mataji,
Yeah.
let's say I pick up a book now and I see a report of a flying saucer or a flying disc or some flying craft. And I'm going to go on to other things in a second, but I want sort of a synopsis from you here. Or I see the reports of these black triangles. What am I seeing, Mataji?
Whatever. There could be a number of things. I have discussed this in the chapter about the ufology, the UFOs, and things. So there have always been, along the history of mankind and even before, according to the Vedic tradition, there have always been different technologies, which includes vimanas or flying crafts. Now, when we see something in the sky that we don't know, we cannot. UFO means unidentified flying object, literally. So we see something we cannot identify, but it's flying around in the sky. It could be some non-human, non-terrestrial, ordinary science, human science, mainstream technology. But the point is, this other technology that is more advanced than the usual, space rockets and airplanes that we see every day. Okay, it could be different, as on a matter of principles of functioning, of application. For example, I was mentioning that we were discussing the other day about the laser technology, that is developed starting from the characteristics of light and of sound technology in the Vedic tradition, Vedic science, that is the foundation of a lot of strange technology that cannot be explained mechanically, such as the vimanas and the astras, especially the astras, the famous Divya Astra, and the vimanas as well. They speak a lot about mantras. There is a complete category of weaponry and vehicles that function on mantras, and not in a fairy tale magic sense. In a very solid, practical, scientific application sense, which are not yet properly understood by the mainstream scientific community. So, for example, going on, in the discussion, when I was speaking about the weapons in Vedic India, I am making a big, big section about the so-called, nuclear weapons of ancient India. They were not nuclear as we have seen until recently. It's not the nuclear missiles Hiroshima and Nagasaki style. The Brahmastra is a completely different concept. It's not that destructive. And I have exposed also the false information that has been distributed by the supporters of the ancient aliens, ancient astronaut, things, conspiracy theories, about the ancient stories, for example, in the Mahabharata and Ramayana, which and the quotes from the Veda Samhitas, which were completely false. From these particular people, there, for example, there is one description that is offered by this guy Davenport, who wrote a famous book here, the saying nuclear war. Let me see if I find it.
Oh, was it Mohenjo-Daro? Was it Mohenjo-Daro?
Yeah, he was talking about Mohenjo-Daro. Yeah.
So Mataji, so when you see these reports of flying saucers, are you saying that in some cases they are interdimensional? They are from sort of other beings in other lokas, maybe?
Yeah, they could definitely be. They're fundamentally interdimensional, because we know from the Vedic stories that especially the Rakshasas, the Yakshas, and the Nagas, they are interdimensional beings, because they have the power to manipulate matter. And there are portals still today. If you go, there are several places, especially there is one in Orissa near Puri, that is recognized as a portal to Patala. And there are stories in the Ramayana, for example, when Hanuman and the Vanaras go around looking for Sita, and they come to a mountain, they go inside the mountain, and they go through a portal, and they find themselves in a totally different world. And many other people from more recent experiences have found these portals.
You've mentioned this talk of Admiral Byrd and all these people flying into sort of in Antarctica, and then all of a sudden the scenery changes, and the American Indians, the Native Americans, the American Indians described points and mountains where white lights used to come, and they were regarded as portals. Are they similar phenomena to what you've described there?
Yeah. And in fact, we have a long history of literature and we can say conspiracy theories, but I don't like the definition, because conspiracy means people who conspire to create some damage, to do some mischief. And this is not applicable. But anyway,
sure.
So the idea, for example, as you were mentioning, of the hollow earth, because
absolutely.
The Agartha, the famous, because that is a major point that many people have been discussing about, because there are some witness who went through situations like that, and there is no need to postulate a hollow earth when we can understand that if you go inside a cave or under a lake or something, you can get into a portal to another world. Because the hollow earth
it's not hollow earth.
Exactly.
It's not hollow earth as in I'm going underground and suddenly I find a massive city.
Yeah.
It's more a portal to another dimension.
Underground, you find portals through which you can get, yourself into different worlds. Because if it's like Svarga and Patala and all these worlds, they're not in the same space dimension where the other planet Earth is. So you can go around by spaceships and have all the telescopes you want. You're never going to find them because they're in a different dimension.
So this Mataji now leads us very nicely. And just before we leave this particular topic, I have a question.
Okay.
Are any UFOs from Mars or Alpha Centauri or anything like that? Are any of them from? Did any of them travel across the stars to the
It's
Earth at all?
possible. It's possible. We don't know. What we know from the Vedic sources, from the Vedic Shastra, is that there are worlds. Now, the term that the Shastra used to define these different worlds is loka. And loka refers to groups of people. It doesn't refer to a geographical planet. So when we translate planet, it's not exactly correct. In Bengali, one thing that,
Look. They use the word look as,
open my mind a lot in that regard. In Bengali language, loka means person. Bhadralok.
Yes. So loka, therefore, is a collective of people, basically.
Yeah. Those who inhabit that world. So world is better than planet.
That's
as
very
a definition.
So, Mataji, my next question.
Yeah.
Really, in relation to this, and it's quite a nice sort of it builds to this nicely, is that then let's talk about the fact that recently what's gained more emphasis is the idea of these alien abductions. People often, it started off with that Travis Walton case, and then it moved quite quickly onto reports of people being taken from their beds at night and experimented on, and then you heard about the cattle mutilations and all these things. So what I wanted to understand from you, Mataji, is we now know from a lot of people that these aren't just, even distinguished psychiatrists have said that, look, this isn't just some made up stuff. Something's going on. Something is happening with these people. How do we link, Mataji, these alien abductions, these disturbing accounts of cattle mutilation, to what you've just described here?
Yeah, actually, we have from the Vedic perspective. Okay, now we can talk about the Vedic perspective, and then we can talk about the perspective of other groups and cultures, on our planet. Now, from the Vedic perspective, the Asuras, specifically the Rakshasas, but also the Yakshas and the Nagas, are fundamentally violent. So they don't have respect for other beings, especially for those they consider inferior. The Rakshasas are the worst because they actually treat human beings like animals. Like
food, Mataji? Like food?
Like food, yeah, especially like food. But, okay. So, of course, they don't have tender sentiments for animals, for, cows and other animals that the humans keep. So they actually target animals who have a more developed consciousness, because they relish the fear and despair and suffering of other beings.
And does that Mataji link with why they're abducting the cows and farm animals, those sort of, because they're developed
Yeah,
from a conscious point of view.
That, and I think that is I think it is also compatible with the Vedic perspective, is that these beings, these aliens, if we want to call them that, are actually making research on the genetic modifications of the situation on planet Earth. Because these cattle mutilation and abductions that have become more prominent after the Second World War. So it looks like, this is not expressed in the Vedic knowledge, but it is a popular theory that these aliens in general, both the good and the bad ones, and especially the bad ones, are monitoring the situation on the planet Earth because of the genetic modifications. The mutations and genetic modifications that are going on. And these cattle mutilations are partially also to make what we could call scientific research. So, that's not very different from what human beings do in vivisection. In so-called scientific research, where they experiment on animals.
So what you're saying, Mataji, is this is a combination of these beings, malevolent beings, who eat cattle and us, and also they do some, they conduct research.
Yeah, they conduct research and they like it. Because, it's a double bonus. They monitor what we are doing as human beings, and they also get their satisfaction.
But, Mataji, there's also this prevalent viewpoint in some UFO circles that these beings are envious of certain aspects of the human character. Therefore, they require that human blood in that respect. Is there any truth to that, Mataji, or not?
Yeah, in a sense, yes. They want to control their human cattle. They see humans as cattle, and they want to control them, so they are trying to modify them, to better control them. And that's, yeah.
So, Mataji, with that in mind, does that then link as to why there's so much bad stuff on the news? They want to create wars because they want to exploit that human fear and anger and negativity. They feed off that energy. Is that right, Mataji?
Yeah, that has been going on for 3,000 years. From the famous Asura, the great Asura, the Ahura Mazda, that Zarathustra presented to his followers as a real god.
So that then brings us, Mataji, to this concept of alien abductions and whatnot that is going on. These represent these Rakshasas and Yakshas doing what they're normally doing, Mataji.
Yeah.
That's these are Rakshasas that are basically kidnapping humans. And I guess as your research found out or discovered, are there any predisposing characteristics in human beings that might make them more prone to these abduction experiences? Have you discovered anything that would make you think, these sort of individuals appear to be, because some people can't see them and other people can, so they can appear in the middle of a crowded city and they'd be invisible to the majority. What makes someone more prone?
Human beings have a potential that can be developed, in a variable manner. Some human beings are more sensitive than others just because they develop this potential, in a different way rather than with the mass. In fact, this potential, this sensitivity of the human beings was considered, mostly normal in very ancient cultures. Until it was, condemned as witchcraft. Because mostly what was called witchcraft was actually sensitivity, being able to perceive subtle realities, which in ancient times could be done by a much larger part of human beings. So it is also one of the yoga siddhis, listed as one of the yoga siddhis, being able to see and participate in the activities of higher beings. Just like some human beings are more, they are more capable of telepathy, for example. So in the same way, there is more sensitivity. There are psychic people, who can see, so-called clairvoyance. Clairvoyance means duradarshan, means seeing things, far things. Seeing clearly things that most people cannot see or hear.
Yes, yes, yes.
So this is a verified fact. Even in the after the Second World War, even the CIA, put up a special program, to investigate these powers that human beings could develop. Both Russia, the Soviet Union, and the CIA was, kind of exploring this field of research, just like they were exploring the field of research of space missions, on the same level.
So I've got a question for you based on exactly what you've been saying now.
Yeah.
So Mataji, we've seen a shift. I've noticed a polar shift in the quote-unquote acceptance of UFOs, even amongst the mainstream.
Yeah.
Some people say they are preparing us for disclosure, and they're going to announce something. Can I ask you, Mataji, as the Kali Yuga rolls on, do you expect such phenomena to
we still have quite
this whole phenomena during this period?
Yeah, this is a very particular period, because it's a small window of time that is closing, in which humankind has the opportunity to do a lot of evolution at individual and collective level. So things are changing very quickly, and much depends, the future depends on what we choose to do today. So there is definitely a component that more people are accepting the possibility, and they're even opening up to different perspective about the non-earthling worlds. But there is also a component that is we have to recognize that this tendency is being manipulated and hijacked and directed, channeled and directed to distract the general population from the problems that our planet is going through. So it's the same mentality of the second coming of Jesus. So in fact, many people in groups they superimpose the idea of the second coming of Jesus, the Messianic kingdom, with the coming of the aliens and the futuristic kingdom. So the galactic brothers are going to save us.
And that's also being exploited by the so-called Operation Bluebeam.
Have you heard about Robert Vallée? Yeah.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah. He's actually saying that a large part of these so-called UFO phenomena are part of this, super government. We can call it deep state if we want.
Yeah, one world globalization, where effectively they will fake an alien invasion.
Exactly.
To sort of create one world government to unite against the aliens.
Yeah, so you can see that
Independence Day. That's why Independence Day and all these films took took more of a prominence recently.
Yes.
Do you buy that, Mataji, or not? What are your
thoughts on that? These are all factors, so you can see that the scene is very complex. It is not so simplistic like yes or no. Is it the aliens or not? It is not that simple, because there are so many components. Like I was mentioning earlier, from the Vedic perspective, from the popular perspective, and from the perspective of other ancient cultures. For example, I've been researching a bit lately in these past few days about the traditions of the Native Americans, who also have a very strong tradition, very strong field of discussion about these so-called aliens. You heard about Blue Kachina, the Hopi?
I've heard of it, Mataji.
Yeah.
The Hopi, yes, I've heard about the Hopi, yes.
So, that is so typically, so from the Native American tradition, we find a lot of material that confirms the Vedic information, especially from South America. The Central America and South America, we have whatever information has survived is actually confirming, especially the Naga narrative. So, just like...
tell me about that, Mataji, because there's all sorts of schools of thought which says that, the Naga lived there, they worshipped the Naga.
Yeah.
Some erroneous commentators have said, Patala Loka was South America. There's been all sorts of theories. Yeah. Some people say that the human sacrifice reflected the fact that these people
it's simplistic because it doesn't consider the fact of portals. Now, that in South America they had these, there are still now these special...
Nazca lines.
No, apart from the Nazca line. You heard about the cenotes?
No, Mataji, what's that?
The cenotes are relatively small lakes within the,
Yes, I've heard of that.
The cenotes, where
things come out of those lakes, basically.
And they were throwing in as well as sacrifices to the, these superhuman, we can call them gods, but they were not, the confusion comes mostly from the dictionary meaning of the English word God, because it's very confusing, because it's the same term used for the Param Brahman and it's used for yakshas, deva, adityas, danavas, daityas. It's used for anything that is worshipped by someone, like the god of rock. Yeah, right. Maybe not. You see, so in this cenotes, the Mayans, the Incas, I don't remember, the Aztec, I don't remember which ones. I think most, maybe all of them. They recognize these small lakes as ways to communicate with the dimensions of the gods. So they were throwing offerings into these cenotes. And offerings not just of object, but also human sacrifices. And some people recently, some speleologists, some geologists, they're trying to go and explore these cenotes and found these underground tunnels, underwater tunnels, and they're extremely dangerous because lots of people go and they don't come back. Now, why they don't come back, we can have all the theories we want. But that is the same also for the tunnels, underground tunnels that have been found under the entire Europe, from England to Turkey. There is a network of underground tunnels that have been mostly blocked because they're very dangerous. Now, you heard about the pyramid in Visoko?
I know that there's pyramids all over the world that have been...
Yeah, in Visoko specifically, that when it was possible to research, now the government has stopped all access, but when it was possible to research, this guy, I don't remember his name, but he became famous because of his research work on this Visoko pyramid. He found that the dating of this pyramid was many tens of thousands of years before the Egyptian pyramids. Before, the present, he was saying from 30 to 50,000 years before the present. And they found that these
pyramids in Bosnia.
Yeah,
we know those pyramids in Bosnia are massive, aren't
Bosnia, exactly, Visoko, Bosnia. That one. It's one. Specifically, this big one in Visoko. So, and they found they're made of cement. They're made of aggregate, they're artificial. There is no doubt they're artificial because they're not made of stone. They're made of aggregate. And they have incredible tunnels. And this idea of tunnels you will find also in Anatolia, in ancient Turkey. They have found these completely underground cities that have different levels. But all this is not presented in regular government public schools. But they are verifiable information. They're actual archaeological facts. They can go and see them if the government allows. Of course. So, the picture is much more complex than most people can think. So it's...
Indeed, Mataji.
Yeah.
Indeed. So do you think that there is indeed a spiritual resurgence, but it's multi-layered because there's a subversive agenda behind that too, or trying to infiltrate that as well?
It's complicated. The idea of the spiritual resurgence is there because this is an opportunity that the cosmic laws impose on the Asuras. The Asuras have they must leave the choice to human beings to evolve, to progress. If they don't, the devils are going to intervene.
So you're talking they've got to choose, and that's why
Yeah.
the asuras always invite you.
Yeah.
You're always invited. There's this
Yeah.
sort of consent that
Yeah,
is
terms of agreement.
required.
Yeah, consent. Yeah.
So that's important. That you have to do it through your free will. You
Yeah.
can't be forced to do it. They always give you a choice. And some people say that's why there's predictive programming and all these things. It's almost a way of saying, we told you, we gave you the choice. Look,
Exactly.
here it is.
Yeah.
It's you that chose to ignore
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, you
and you
accept
gave us
it. Yeah.
consent. Yes. Yes. So that's where that's coming from, Mataji.
It's a law of karma. It's a law of the universe. So they're not stupid. The asuras are not stupid. They know how to move around, and they know how to, push the boundary a bit. Sometimes a lot.
So what you've done here, Mataji, is you've beautifully connected scripture, philosophy,
Yeah.
to what appears to be the quote-unquote UFO phenomena.
Yes.
So you've actually connected the philosophy, consciousness, with what is a so-called flying saucer phenomena, basically.
Yeah, sources, history, historical evidence, and verifiable information.
So I'm going to put you on the spot now, Mataji. This is a very important. What's going to happen in the next globally in the next? This is an interesting time in the world, and anyone who's awake will know that this is a very interesting time.
Yeah.
And there are some people who will say, "Oh, we've had these times before," but I don't know. I've not been around, 200 years ago to know that. But it's a very interesting time. How the discussion we've had about UFOs? What do you see happening? What will the average person see? And I'm talking about the average person. What sorts of sights will they see over the next few decades or the next few years that will really awaken them?
It's very difficult to see, because if they keep choosing as they're choosing in the next 5 years, not decades, in the next 5 years, this particular window of opportunity is expected to close. So this is a time of great, all the things will come out. Things that were hidden are coming out. And this is for, this next 4 to 5 years. And there are plans, they have been published by governments, by this deep state government. They're available, because by the laws of karma they need to make this information available. Of course they're going to muddy the information up, to make some, stir in some mud and fake information and preposterous ideas, because they want people to remain confused. So what I am expecting that in these 4 to 5 years, we'll have more and more so-called revelations. But people will, the system will try to distract people from this understanding through wars and, financial crisis and this and that, so that people will be too distracted to actually pay sufficient attention to greater, subjects. For example, greater issues. For example, I think you may have heard about the Three-Eye Atlas.
I've heard of it, Mataji. I've heard of it.
Which is supposed to be a comet, but it's quite weird. And when it passed near our sun, you know, we don't know if that, you know, it was a three-eye atlas that triggered the sun, or the sun was triggered by itself, or whatever. There was a serious spurt in solar activity that was completely unexpected in relationship with the solar cycles. And the three-eye atlas has been behaving very strangely. And it paired up with another interstellar object that is has been named Swan. So the next closest approach to Earth is 19 December 2025. So
Yes.
it's there is a connection between the disturbance of magnetic fields on the Earth with the gravitational fields and the magnetic fields of these comets. We can call them comets, no problem, you know. So there have been serious developments also in the geological field. Like, for example, in Ethiopia, this big volcano is splitting the region, the tectonic, you know, faults. They call it faults, you know, and a sea is forming up inside Africa, you know, and the effect of this volcanic eruption can be observed from space, from satellites, and the smoke from this volcano in Ethiopia has reached Delhi.
And yes, I heard about that.
Yeah, people in Delhi say, "Oh, lots of smoke, you know, water pollution," you know, and they don't know that it's coming from this volcano in Ethiopia, on top of the other normal pollution that is in Delhi, of course, you know. So there are things, big things that are happening, but the legacy media, the official media, are very quiet about this.
So, Mataji, this brings us to a very important topic, but maybe we should just have a couple of minutes on this because I think it's important.
Yeah.
You've talked about is what's their quote unquote motivation? It isn't money, is it, Mataji? Money is a byproduct.
Money is just an instrument. They're not interested in money. Money is just the instrument by which they control people. What they want is to control and exploit people.
No, but Mataji, they're already controlling people. Some would argue
they can do more. They want to do more.
Is it control of consciousness that they want, rather than control? Because I can be poor, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to give up.
If you are poor enough, you will not have any opportunity, no energy, no time, no intelligence left for your personal evolution.
That's the key. But Mataji, what benefit would they have in? I mean, because they control a lot of material resources anyway on the Earth, but what benefit would they have? What's the end point? What is their end point, Mataji? If you were to
you'll see in Bhagavad Gita chapter 16.
What is the end point?
Yeah, you see the description of the Asuras. They just want control for the sake of control. You know? Control and exploitation.
So it's sense gratification. It's pure sense gratification. It's control for the sake of control, basically. Is there something they want from us that they don't have?
Yeah, they want more control over human beings, yeah.
But is there a human quality that they think they can get from us? Some people say that.
No, you cannot get equality from someone else. You know, you can get equality from someone else only by association and learning. You cannot extract equality from someone else to gain it for yourself. You know, if someone, you know, knows mathematics, you know, you cannot extract his mathematical knowledge from him for your benefit without you actually learning mathematics, or by forcing that person to work for you, to use mathematics to serve you, but you're not getting his mathematical quality.
I understand. That makes complete sense, Mataji.
So, you know, they like the idea, you know, they they like the idea of controlling people, controlling the emotions of people, controlling the consciousness in the sense of emotions, because they feed on emotions. You know,
Mataji,
the example of vampires.
Absolutely, and I think there's a metaphysical discussion to be had on what vampires are, rather than this blood drinking
it's not
thing
just
that comes
physical
into,
blood.
you know, like Bram Stoker probably had a higher definition. They say it was based on Vlad the Impaler, but I think there were probably metaphysical definitions that he had basically in mind when he wrote that.
Oh yeah, there is a lot. You know, all these topics are very, very popular these days, because that's exactly what's happening.
Mataji? Were vampires Rakshasas? You know, is that because they could appear, they had the strength of 20 men, they could change into a into a dog or something like that, or was it, I can't remember, a rat or something?
Yeah, whatever, like because they can, they have these yoga siddhis, you know, naturally, so they can manipulate matter, they can manifest any form they want.
Yes, absolutely, Mataji. I mean, that's a very so you almost try and connect that to what the vampire was, and they had to drink human blood as well, basically, because they had to.
No, they don't have to drink human blood. They absorb the human energy and the animal energy.
And that's why the term energy vampire comes from.
Yeah.
And that's where that term energy vampire comes from.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
There are certain people. Yeah. There's certain people that you leave the room and you're thinking, God, I feel so drained.
Yeah.
Literally, isn't it?
Yep. Okay.
Mataji, I'd like to thank you for an excellent discussion. And
thanks.
Are there any other points, or do you think we've covered the salient aspects of what we wanted to talk about?
Yeah, we can continue next time, more specifically, if you like.
Very good. Yes, excellent, Mataji. I think you know, there is a topic in mind, but I'd like to thank you and for your time and energy in giving this in giving this you know, excellent in giving yourself for this excellent discussion, and we look forward to picking up the next time.
So, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Jai
Mataji. Jai Shriman Narayan. Take care.